everybody, welcome back to the Malibash Media Show. Today we have with us a really special guest, Jimmy Kelly, who's CEO, producer, writer, everything. He has his own media company and does a lot of really cool work, from commercials to influencing type content creation, along with films. I mean, you've done everything, Jimmy, so we're really excited to have you here with us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you making the time. I know people are excited to kind of learn a little bit of more of how you got started and how you started creating. You first started in North Carolina, right? And art school and everything, and then kind of went off and started your own company, which is fantastic. It's really brave of you to do because it's a tough world, right? And especially in the media. So tell us a little bit of how you got started. What inspired you to create Fight On Entertainment?
So I was at school at UNCSA and trying to figure out what was going to be like. I was in my senior year and I was trying to figure out what was next. And as part of your fourth year, everybody's allowed to pitch a thesis project, and then so anybody can be like the screenwriters, but depending on what you learned is what your job was. So I was a director and stuff, and so the projects were greenlit by the school, and I had a script that wasn't greenlit, but I really liked it. And I said to myself, like, what else could I do with this? And it eventually expanded into a feature film called In Critical Condition. And I was like, all right, well, now what do I do? So one of the first things you're told is, when making a film, is you need to have a company, at least an LLC. So that way all of your dealings, your insurance, all that goes through the company instead of just like you personally. So Fight On Entertainment was literally made out of necessity. It was all right, I need something. And I was like, well, if I do this right, it can be like, it can be my particular brand. And so it took a little while to come up with a name and logo and all that stuff, but I had something. And then once I did that, I started getting to pre-production on In Critical Condition, and then we shot the $10,000 budgeted feature film, 90% in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and then another 10% in Queens, New York.
That's really cool. The $10,000 is not a big budget for a film, and
no.
That's really cool to have two different locations in there as well. To have that opportunity. What was it like working with a group of people to create that? Is it what you imagined it was going to be?
I mean, it was more run and gun than I had anticipated, I guess. And it was so funny because we had a lot of people that visited the school talked about like changing scripts like on the day of and things like that. And like I had always kind of looked at that as like, oh, like, yeah, well, if you would like improv stuff or whatever, but like because of the small budget and to always like make sure we were doing stuff, what ended up started happening is, because of different people's availability, I would try to like write things based off other people's availability. So that way we were always like shooting something, and eventually that was able to help like piece together. So there was like a nice like fluid narrative to then, go on and do what we did with it. So
That's cool. So what do you like doing more? Do you like to write? Because you've done every piece of production, so you've gotten to see everything. What do you enjoy the most?
Directing. I think directing is what I was born to do. Writing is what I enjoy doing, and producing is what I have to do. But it doesn't mean that I dislike producing in any capacity. It's just producing requires certain details and nuances that can be very tiresome, because it doesn't matter how much you're into a story. Nobody really wants to worry about, all right, well, what are we eating? And then does that fit into the budget? I'm sorry, but nobody really does. So, but it's wildly important. And like in dealing with insurance companies is another, it's a necessity, but it's also just such a pain. But like, it's all really important. And for me, what I noticed with being at school was, because I only ever did one of the jobs, I sometimes kind of felt a little out of my depth in certain situations because I didn't necessarily know what was going on in those other two realms that are super important for the creation of projects. So I basically kind of made the decision that from now on, either I have to be paid a lot of money to not be in those positions, or I just need to be in those positions so I have a better understanding of where everything's coming from, and so that way nothing comes out of left field. So um, it helps like a lot. That's why that's how I choose who I work with and stuff like that. But I think it helps if as a director you're like that, because then the rest of your crew and your actors, you know what's really going on, so you know how to properly talk with them. And especially with actors, like, you never want to rush them, but like if you know all the like little details about like what's going on with set and locations that they don't know, you can figure out better ways to tell them than at a certain point being like, well, you kind of have to get this acting right because we gotta like move. So the idea is to like be able to like help, is to understand that so I can better help them. And the same thing with like the DP and stuff like that. Like, yeah, like the first AD would do that, but like for In Critical Condition, like we never really like had a first AD because we just didn't have the money to have one, so you have to like, especially in like the lower indie film world, you have to like know how to do that all. So
Mhm.
yeah, so and like I said, it definitely helped because then I knew with like certain locations what the rules were and everything like that. So I never even had that issue of like telling my actor to do something and then being told by my producer like, oh, he can't do that because of the location rules and like all that stuff. So um, I feel like those three keys, like being at least a part of all that, you can get like a better handle on your situation. And especially as independent filmmakers, I feel if you want to make your own movie, you typically have to do all three jobs in some capacity, no matter what. Even if you work with another indie producer, you're just going to end up having to just out of necessity.
Yeah, you play a lot of roles, and you have to be prepared for that.
Right.
And if you know what each role does, you can prep your team better in the end result. And it's kind of really a great homage to leadership too. You get to learn how to be a really amazing leader, and you find everybody's strong suits. How a manager would say, you're good with the logistics side, we're going to put you over here. You get to do sets and props and all this other stuff, and then you learn people's strengths and weaknesses, right? And so you get to play towards those, and that's just a huge part of the whole process. You get to be kind of a mediator, and I mean, you play so many different roles
Mhm.
as that managing type of
Mhm.
mindset, getting to learn all that stuff. It really creates a wonderful picture for leadership and who you are in the as you grow, and then get into bigger roles, you get to see that whole side, and you get to know the depth to it,
Thank you.
basically.
Yeah, and I think like the biggest thing is it also helps, because I feel like being like that, I think it helps the director producer relationship. So like, because I've worked with other producers, whether I'm a co-producer on it and not directing, or if I'm a director as well, I feel like it helps because sometimes there's this thing where it's like the producer's like the business and the director is the creative, but when you show, you're basically like reaching out with an olive branch, like, hey, I actually understand where you're coming from, so I can better empathize with you, therefore we can work with this as a team, and I can open up to you how I am as a director, so that you're not caught off guard, and it's not this like weird thing where it's like, all right, well, the producer just hires this director, and then like the director's doing this like quote unquote weird creative stuff, and then like, they have to like figure
Yeah.
out if it's like actually like good or whatever. Instead, it's more like like, hey, like, and then like I've gotten, depending on the producer and stuff like that, the last big production short film that I did, my producing partner, him and I had worked on a commercial together, and we wrote the project together. But because he understood where I was coming from as a director, and I understood where he was coming from as a producer, because I was also a co-producer. Um, in certain scenes, when I was like too close, like I had to be with the actors. I then had a second set of eyes with my producer watching monitor, and I could trust what he had to say. So, I think with understanding other people's jobs and things like that, I think it really helps so you can actually work better with them. It's not like a competition. It's more like I know like what all these little nuances is that, and therefore like if I'm like hired to direct something, I'm like, oh well, I know, if we do this, I can't just ask for like a crane just because I want it. I can try to figure out ways so like we can have more money set to production design as opposed to like that. You know what I mean? So um, it just helps with all that. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing worse than being in any type of situation and the big people, don't know how to talk to the little ones down here,
Mhm.
and that they're asking something, or anybody, if you're working in any type of setting, whether it's the design, whether it's in uh, you know, corporate, whatever.
Right.
If there's a disconnect and you don't know how to connect with the people that you're working with, it's going to be a really rough ride. You're not going to have too much
Mhm.
success, in a productive way, I guess is probably the
Right.
best way to put it. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
That's super cool. And I mean, so you started out in North Carolina, you're in New York now.
Mhm.
What caused that switch from the south to the north? And then, like what created what was the name? I want to know why you picked Fight on Entertainment. What was the reason for the name?
Um, so I'm actually originally from New York, and when I went to North Carolina for college, um, you basically had a few different options. North Carolina was starting to bubble up with film work. There was Atlanta, New Orleans, California, and New York. So for me, I chose New York because I knew with people I knew and things like that, I could find the most affordable living situation for me. And I knew a lot of people in New York already. So if I stayed in New York, I could travel more to the other locations as needed. Um, in regards to Final Entertainment, it's really funny because everybody assumes that I went to USC because apparently their sport motto is "Fight On." So I thought that was like really funny. I've been asked that a couple of times, like, "Oh, so you went to USC? You're a Trojan?" And I'm like, "No, actually, I didn't even know. I applied there, but I didn't get in." So, um, uh, but no, I had a lot of trouble coming up with the name because originally I was kind of thinking like something like Diamond in the Rough, just something like. But the biggest thing is like I feel like I'm constantly fighting something to get things done, and I was just like, nobody has this as a production name, which I don't really understand why. There's every sort of hyperbole connecting it to some sort of war or fighting or something, and
Mhm.
nobody does. And I was just like, I'm gonna basically be like this gritty indie filmmaker for quite a long time, and I was like, this just works perfect, and the logo works with like the small guy in the foreground, and then like the big giant, the sort of David and Goliath
Yeah,
aspect.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was like at a certain point that like just like clicked. I was like, yeah, yeah, that works.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
I like it, and it's true because that's the media world
yeah,
in a nutshell, right? You're just
yeah,
constantly fighting for the next gig or next shoot, basically. Even you need to,
right.
yeah, keep pushing and keep pushing. So
Mhm,
that's really cool. So what do you enjoy? You've done commercials, you've done
mhm.
films, and then you've done the content creation for like social media. What do you enjoy doing the most?
Film is definitely the most interesting because um I look at it as like purely from an audience perspective. Like I would, out of all those things, I would rather go see a feature film. So that's what I want to make is like, oh well, I want to make the thing that I would personally want to watch. So the other stuff is great. The other stuff's a lot of fun. Um, it's obviously like short films, video content creation, commercials. They're all very relevant, and you do get to tell stories in shorter confines. But the other thing too is with feature films because they're longer and they take more time. When you get it right, it's a much bigger deal, I guess personally. Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's just that's what I prefer. I mean, TV is also cool too. I haven't done as much TV because essentially content creation, depending on who it's for, almost lends itself to TV to a degree, like from a web series kind of perspective. Um, but yeah, I just feel like because that's what I enjoy most is movies. I feel like making movies, and it's just the thing that's like the best out of them if I have to choose.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're probably coming up with new ideas all the time to make movies and stuff because you're a writer, so that's really
Yeah,
cool.
that's why as a writer I'm looking into pitching some scripts and getting representation as a writer because I just have too many ideas and I'm not going to live to be able to do all of them because I'm going to come up with more anyway. So now I'm just
Mhm.
kind of like, all right, well, like who wants them and who and what sort of deals can they get me because that's these stories just have to get out there anyway. So
Yeah.
um it's also why like I did which I want to do again. I did a book in 2019 as well.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. What was it like to write a book? I mean, that's really different than doing films and stuff. But I mean, okay, you're writing a script, so I guess it's not super different. But
I mean, there's definitely certain differences. When I started writing it, I had to get used to the idea of not writing like a spec script, which is like very much like person does something like it,
right,
much prettier. Um, but essentially, what had happened was I wrote like 2 or 3 short stories because I just wanted to write them. I had an idea for something and I felt like it would work better as a short story and I wrote them. And then I was like looking at them and I was like, I don't have anything to do with these like at all. Like I don't know
mhm,
what to do with them. Um, I mean, aside from obviously making a short film out of them, but like aside from that, like I don't have anything to do with them. So I came up, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna because it'll cost me no money. I'm going to write a book. It'll be a collection of short stories. I will edit it myself and I will publish it myself. And I will just see like what it does. And you know, so that was actually like very interesting and a lot of fun. So I want to do that again. I just haven't had the time.
yeah.
Um, but
Well, that's really time consuming. That's so awesome.
yeah, it was quite different. But I definitely enjoyed it. And it's very interesting reading different scripts because you're told a very specific way to do a spec script. Then you'll read another script and it'll not read like that at all. And then you'll read like contest winners and things like that, and you'll find that there's this like middle ground. And I feel like with practicing writing these short stories and things like that, like I'm starting to find like a middle ground to help spec scripts not just be too basic, to
Mhm.
have without being literary ways to make it more enticing for the reader as they go down it and stuff. So um yeah, so I like highly recommend anybody that is a writer of some sort, they should at least try writing short stories just to kind of see what it's like doing like the different tenses and like trying to keep that all the way through and finding colorful language and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's a huge part. Reading, if you're a good reader and able to keep that intake coming in so that you can kind of get new fresh perspectives and then be able to keep that all out in the same as writing, and be able to kind of give that out in a creative outlet as well and do successfully. It's huge. I mean, a lot of people cannot do that. So hats off to you. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Have you ever thought of doing classes for writing?
What do you mean, like
Like teaching people how to screenwrite? Because a lot of people do
um
not know how to do
so
that.
I've I've kind of thought about it. I haven't committed to it only because I as as easy as screenwriting has come to me, at least in the basic sense, like the basic fundamentals, I know for teaching there's a lot more thought than, oh, I just have to tell this person to do this.
Yeah.
And with screenwriting changing and understanding all that, I feel like before like I teach people, I really need to understand how I'm teaching them.
Yeah.
So it's something that I consider, and I may start out with like doing more content creation for final entertainment that would deal with that.
Mhm.
and just do like, oh, like here's like a YouTube page on like how to write, I don't know, like how to write a short film or something like that, and just
Right.
do it like that for now.
Yeah.
But I do offer like script consultation and things like that, so I help people out that way. Um, the biggest thing is like the easiest way to really get started is to find out all of the rules of screenwriting, quote unquote, and then understand why they're there. So that
Mhm.
way you know what you do and why you do it. Because you can break rules, but you can't break them without understanding why. You can't just break them because you just think it would be more interesting. Because that's like not, it's not going to work that way.
Right.
But yeah. So I think it's more um writing is a very weird thing because I've also read people's scripts and I've been told rules, and then I read these scripts and I'm like, they break all the rules, and the thing reads fine and it does well. So yeah, so I think right now I more or less teach when asked, I guess. You
Yeah.
know, if I read somebody's script and then I explain to them, because the biggest thing I notice with a lot of people is understanding dialogue.
Yeah.
I think there's this typical indie filmmaker route where part of it has to do with money and part of it just has to do with like making sure your entire idea comes across, that we write characters that are that their dialogue is essentially just like on the nose, and it sometimes works and a lot of times doesn't. So it's understanding how to listen to, like, go out into the world and listen to regular human beings how they speak, and then figuring out how to tweak that with part of your plot, and figuring out what to show, not tell, and all that other stuff. So yeah, but I mean, I might do it eventually. Like it's definitely something I've been considering. Just like, you know, like, oh, like I can offer on like Skillshare. I know something. There's a couple other of those sites, you know. But yeah, or like I said, I might just start doing that more with YouTube once I have more time. Because every time I think I have more time to do something like that, I'm then like hired to do some companies like social media content, and I'm like, oh, all right, well now I'm occupied, and I've actually been writing more, which is great. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And I wanted to go back to the point where you're talking about people needing to go out and listen to how you actually talk. There's um a lot of times in films when you see or hear somebody talking and they keep saying the person's name over and over again,
yeah,
it's it doesn't there's a couple films, oh, okay, there's a lot of films where you just hear the person's name over and over, and every time that person talks to this other person, you hear their name, or there's, little things that it just doesn't sound like an everyday type person talking,
right.
and
And
it just is really rough. And you can kind of you see the movies that have done well and how they're working into the script
mhm,
real life situations, and it makes it so much more relatable.
right, you have to like, there's like, so there's how people really talk,
Yeah,
how scripts typically sound or read, and then there's like this like middle, there's like this middle ground, and
yeah,
there's like an accepting, like the name, for example, there's an acceptance of saying the name a little more in scripts, but not that
yep,
much. So you
yeah,
have to like, you have to know that balance, or you have to find ways to get names out there, because the reason why, because I've noticed that as an issue, definitely, like there's definitely been movies that I've seen where, because they don't do it enough, I couldn't tell you the characters names. I don't, you know what I mean. I just know, if I'm lucky it'll be an actor I know, so then I'll be like, oh well, I just know that person and that's the connection. But yeah, so you have to like find all this balance and stuff, and I think that's one of the most difficult things as a screenwriter, is the balancing of what is like film acceptable and then what is reality, in order to make sure that it goes somewhere in between, so that way it's like film realism, I guess essentially is what you would call it.
yeah,
um so
yeah, and you have that cohesiveness through
yeah,
the
I mean, if you're really lucky, you're directing whatever it is too, then you're hearing other people say it, then you can figure out where to place it, and then if you're
Mhm.
really lucky, the actors are great, and someone will improv a piece of dialogue that'll get that information across, so it's not, so that way it's very realistic. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, scriptwriters have a lot to do with your whole story and how it comes together basically. Like you can
Mhm.
see indie films or even big budget films where people come and go, and you don't even know what they were doing in the film. You don't know what their names were or anything like that. They're just these random people that came out of nowhere, had some part, you barely remember what their names were, if they even said it at all. And you could tell it was like huge oversight. So it's really interesting. Like, you guys have such a large, like, that screenwrite, the continuity, it's
Mhm.
huge. Like, that makes a very
Right,
major part of the film. It's not
right,
just the
exactly.
concept, it's not just the story and, hey,
Mhm.
let's do this over here. It's, how is this going to be seen by other people? And even if it looks good on paper, is it going to sound good once the person says it? And are they going to say it convincing enough that it doesn't sound scripted? Is it
Right,
something that just
exactly.
comes off the tongue? So yeah, it's really interesting. I
Yeah.
love that. Is super cool. What are some words of wisdom that you would want to share with people that want to write or get into producing, directing?
So going back to the writing real quick, one thing everybody does have to remember is most films have 5 to 10 uncredited screenwriters that look at the script, and they
Mhm.
also get like an entire year to do it. So if you're doing an indie thing and you're doing it by yourself, and just the fact that you're able to complete it is like a huge thing. And this is coming from somebody that's extremely hard on themselves too, but like we have to understand that like we don't have the resources to have 10 uncredited writers to pay to make sure that our script is as the best that it can be. So just understand that, and you know it's okay that we're fighting that uphill battle, because we'll get there. When it comes to writing, don't be afraid to do like what they call like vomit drafts, just like essentially just like writing like a big mess to get all your ideas down there and then straighten it out later. Just make sure, however you have to get the idea down so you don't forget it, just do it. Um, as a director, the biggest thing is understanding the leadership aspects. Directors have a reputation of just being auteurs and not actually caring about other people and their jobs, and just kind of trying to basically force hand the film into like the best it can be. Understand that that's actually not smart. You don't have a good excuse um, to just be mean. So just understand and empathize with everybody else. And when you do that, you'll start to gain people's trust, especially with the actors. When you start to gain their trust, that's when you can start pushing buttons to get better performances. Because you don't want to, if you come off as too manipulative, they'll shut down, or they'll just give you phoned in things. You have to make it as like cohesive as possible and understanding, so that way they can open up and then give you that emotion that you need. Um, and the other thing too is if you have a better understanding of everybody's job, you can understand then what you see in your head, the movie you see in your head, and you're trying to translate it. You can better translate it to people if you can better understand them. Um, in regards to producing, understand that the movie does not get made without you. Therefore, all the little intricacies um, that come with filmmaking, like I said earlier, like the food and the insurance, those have to be taken care of. The idea is you're a buffer from other creatives, so they don't have to deal with the BS of the business side of it. Because it's when you're creative, it feels a lot like it's all BS, but it's actually like extremely important. Um, so and you do those things that way you can figure out the best ways to save money, so that way you can either get that piece of equipment or hire another crew member, or pay another actor or whatever. So it's very important to understand that. But as a producer too, it's also important to understand that because other people aren't necessarily coming from that, you either A, have to be relatively transparent. Like the last big short film that I did, I literally told the DP, "This is what we're budgeted for. Um, so how is it possible that we can hire people without underpaying them, or at least underpaying them too much? That's at least reasonable, and still get the amount of equipment that we need." And because of that, and he respected the fact that I was like that, he did everything he could to fit within budget, and that worked. And so it's understanding when to do that, and when there's other people that just simply because I also was on a project where the DP um was like a good friend, and he goes like, "Dude, you're venting to me about all these costs. I'm actually like afraid that the movie's not going to happen." And it's like, "No, I'm just venting, and like everything went well, but so you have to know like who you can talk to about that thing, and like understand that. But just knowing when to be transparent and know when to just like kind of take care of the stuff. But I think the biggest thing, and a lot of indie filmmakers just don't get, in general, it's a lot of artists in general, because we're so occupied with our own vision. We don't understand, don't understand empathy. And the second you do that, you can get so much more out of literally like everybody that you're working with. So I just so just understanding empathy, you'll get a lot further. So and I just think you just have to know, you don't want to create garbage, but you also need to practice and create. So you just got to figure out the right balance, and just keep working. Sometimes you're going to make, like we did a 48-hour film festival. We have to go back and fix a couple of things because obviously we were rushed. But I really like the story and stuff like that, and it was a very good learning experience, and I can take that as that. So, we did, me and my writing and producing partner, for Polybius, we did another short film that we actually had to. We're actually going to go back and refilm because it was literally the first thing I ever had to shoot, just because out of necessity I had to shoot it. We couldn't afford a DP, and I've learned so much more. So now we're going to go back and reshoot it, and we tweak the script a little bit and like all this other stuff. So like it was a great learning experience. To now we're going to go make something better, and we actually wrote a feature film based off that. And like, so you just got to figure out, you just got to keep creating. I would say like experiment as much as possible with different aspects. So if you're a director, start shooting your own stuff. If you're a producer and you get somebody to shoot stuff, take it and edit it so you understand that. If there's things you're not really interested in, just talk to other people so you can get like an understanding. Like me personally, I have zero interest in makeup. I think makeup is a very important aspect of filmmaking, but I have zero interest in doing it, and I don't understand it. However, I have talked with makeup artists. I have watched them. I have listened. I at least can understand why it might take longer, how it'll take longer, and like better ways to do things. Like we did a scene with an overhead light, and they did the makeup, and then they literally had to be rushed in because of the way the light was and how the foundation was. It didn't look good it just didn't work on camera. And with that, like, it's like, oh, like that's like good to know. So now I know better for future projects. When we start to change the lighting, and not just like change the lighting with like film stuff, but like we start to use different kinds of practicals, we need to bring in makeup a little bit sooner so that way they can see that. So like I said, it's a combination of having empathy and just like willing to learn. Even if, like I said, even if it's something you don't necessarily know, just understanding what could possibly be needed in that part of filmmaking will help you just kind of lead. Because I think a lot of films, one of their biggest issues is nobody knows how to lead. Nobody knows how to be a leader that can follow. Is really, I guess, the right way of putting it. Everybody wants to lead, but nobody knows how to lead and follow. Like, so just because I'm the director on set, in regards to makeup, I'm not going to like take the lead and be like, oh, well, you can do this like faster. It's like, no, I can step back and listen. Okay, this is how long it's going to take you. Okay. We do have production concerns. I'm letting you know that, but can you like finagle doing your job so that way you can fit with that, so everybody can do their job. So it's really understanding that. And yeah, and it allows for, like with Polybius, we literally had somebody who has been acting for 60 years, somebody who had been acting for like 7, well, technically 10 and stuff like that, between school and stuff like that, at least 10. And then we had 2 actors who have never acted before, ever. And because everybody had a sense of empathy for everybody's way of doing it, and everybody respected what I do and I respected how they work, we were all just able to work together to make a really great film. So it's just, like I said, it's just like understanding everything and just being open. And then you can get like so much more done, and you can get more out of your crew to make better films, and it'll work better even when you're hired to do something. So like, if I'm hired to do a TV show, like I'm basically a hired hand to like direct an episode, but a lot of these other crew members have been there for forever. So I already have an understanding of being able to follow other crew members' leads. So in that particular situation, like that'll be like a really good time to be able to do that. so it all helps. And it helps too, especially as a screenwriter, because then you can start to it's not that you should ever write a script with like the intention of like, oh, this person would have a really hard time on set, we might run behind with setting up that shot, maybe we shouldn't do it. You should still write it, but when you pitch it, then you can like talk to producers, yes, I've thought of this, these are my solutions, anything like that.
That's awesome. I really appreciate all those like insights because you covered a lot of ground as far as like the different the different avenues from writing, all the way to production and post production too.
Yeah,
And needing to understand the whole side, like you said about the makeup thing.
yeah.
You have no desire to be a makeup artist or
Mhm,
prosthetics or
mhm.
even necessarily like the green screen and all that good stuff sometimes, but to know how it works, how long it takes to set up, how long it takes. You can't just throw a prosthetic on somebody's face and a little bit of makeup and be done in 10 minutes. This may take, we
Right.
need to get this person here sooner
Mhm.
because it's going to take them 5 hours to get this makeup look all set. And what is wardrobe? Is this tear actually going to show up? Do we have to watch out for
Yeah.
logos? Like all this other
Oh god.
things.
Yeah.
It's such a big picture. And then if you're renting a location and how long do we need to make sure we set a boundary time for that? Because if somebody else is coming in right after us, we need to make sure that we're out on time and all that good stuff. So yeah, to know the whole
Yeah.
picture is huge and
Right.
to have that empathy and because you guys
Yeah.
get tired, right? It's a long time to
Yeah,
film.
I think, and I noticed, when I crewed, like, on sets, um, I noticed a lot of people were just way too wrapped up in their own jobs
Mhm.
that they were just trying to do a good job, but it comes across as being very standoffish to, like, the rest of the team, and it's like, that's not their intention, they just are coming so it's understanding that you can, and then either figuring out ways to fix it, or basically figuring out ways to, like, let people know, um, like, it's my process, but let me know when it's, like, too much so I can fix it, if that makes sense. Like, some people just, like, have to be allowed to, like, sit by themselves and work for a couple of seconds, and then
Yeah.
it can actually solve your issue. So, it's just like I said, it's just, like, understanding all that, because then, after you understand all this stuff, and then you finally have a finished film, there's this whole other aspect of the business that you have to understand with what to do with what you have just done.
Yeah, no, and what you said earlier about artists. It's hard when they say you can't run an artist at Showtime. In
Mhm.
some ways, there's a lot of truth to that, because
Right,
they're very free mind, they've got a very open mindset and they have so many different ideas. And I think from, being a producer, you get their ideas, you get the actors' ideas of how it should go.
right.
And there's all these different pictures being painted for you, but which one were you going to go with? And
Mhm.
as you guys get tired throughout the day because they've got long, 12-hour filming days, if not longer, and doing that back to back in a row, it can make it really interesting setting. And you're also have the pressure of being in a film, right? And you want to do
Mhm.
your best work because that's your resume forward.
Mhm.
And so it can, like you said, it makes you very focused on what you can do.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it comes down to being afraid too, being afraid of connecting with
Right.
somebody else and things like that. Um, yeah, so it's really that's a really good you painted a really good picture of what it's like to work on a film.
Thank you. The other thing too is everybody needs to understand that certain restrictions and weird things that pop up actually can be some of the most important creative things. And the reason why I bring that up is, um, so in Indiana Jones, there was supposed to be this big fight scene between Indy and this sword fighter.
Mhm.
But Harrison Ford got food poisoning. He literally could not move. Somebody on props, I believe it was, said, "Well, he's got a gun." Now that's literally that famous scene, when he has the whip and the guy shows off his sword and he rolls his eyes and shoots him.
Yeah.
That's that scene. That's how that scene was made. That was actually supposed to be this huge fight scene. But when you allow, and then like Jurassic Park, for example, Jurassic Park is all full of rain because they decided to shoot in Hawaii during tropical storm season.
Mhm.
And Jaws, you don't see the shark very much because the shark robot kept freaking breaking.
Exactly.
Like, so you want to put yourself in winning situations so that when these obstacles come, instead of them just being obstacles to conquer, they become obstacles that actually create something better.
Hmm.
You can't really know it until like afterwards if it actually is good or bad. But the idea is to try to set yourself up in position so when those things happen, you can just kind of, wing it and you can make things work and you
Yeah,
know
you have to go with the flow.
exactly.
The best thing to
Adaptability is
do is to
huge,
prepare for not being prepared.
basically.
Yeah,
Basically.
that's super a really great example of everything, and you definitely have a really cool handle of a lot of stuff that, a lot of people don't know about as far as the film industry goes. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of crunch time for a lot of sitting around waiting and then a lot of crunch time, on top of that.
Yeah. Yep. That happens constantly. And then especially after you're done with a movie, the
Yes.
amount of that is even more insane.
Yeah. Now, how do you like post production?
I mean, post-production is really easy for me only because normally as the director, I just basically have to sit and watch and say what I like and don't like.
Yeah.
So that's really easy. When I'm editing, it's obviously a lot of work because I've done that before. Um, and so that's all very interesting, and they all have its different obstacles. It's really after post-production that's always a huge crapshoot because
Mm.
between film festivals, self distributing or getting a distributor, getting a sales agent, the wide variety of ways to distribute at this point, how to screen things, when to screen things, what is the best appropriate way to be like the main event of it, because once the movie's out there, it's out there already. How do you like it's getting a handle on all of that takes like a lot of finesse and understanding and research and you know um then you have all the doors that constantly close and they close. You have to be able to have like a third like be able to go third person on yourself and omniscient because there are some times where it's like a learning lesson, like, oh, we need next time I make a movie, I have to do this. But there's plenty of times where it's like, oh, this movie is this sort of theme, and this festival is doing these kind of themes. It doesn't fit, therefore, it's just not going there. Same thing with distributors. Oh, these do this kind of genre, and while my film kind of has that genre, it matches up with another one. Therefore, it's not their realm of things to do, or they just did a movie like that. And there's so many other like factors that go into what happens with your film and who picks it up and who doesn't. And you just have to know when to take it as like a lesson of something that you missed or it's not meant to go there for other reasons and you're meant to go somewhere else. So which is really challenging, especially as like artists and being hard on yourself and stuff like that, and basically wanting to take control of like, oh, this is my thing's supposed to go here. Why is it not going here? But yeah, so there's like a lot of that, and then you have to once you do that, then you have to understand contracts and like make sure you get with like a distributor that's like actually going to do their work, or like make sure you don't like give up your script idea to somebody that's basically going to like uh undermine you. Like I had one company that wanted to option a screenplay of mine and like I owned the original IP, but they were literally going to own anything that was created after I signed the contract. And I'm like,
Hmm.
but I
Yeah.
own the IP. There's no way you can own it inherently because it's mine anyways. But it would basically, I guess, be a roundabout. I'm sure there's a way you could fight it in
It's
court,
yeah.
but I'm like, this is
Around
just not
there.
good. I'm not signing this. So you have to like know all that stuff and
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
very cutthroat. It's a very
yeah,
cutthroat, rough business to be in. I think that a lot of people
yeah.
don't realize. There's a lot into it,
Mhm.
and you're dealing with a lot, especially when you get to the distribution side of it. It's not all that easy either when somebody purchases it or
Mhm.
uh, yeah, when you have to go through all the process with the coloring and the editing and special effects, whatever you're gonna have done as well. It's just a lot, and then the paperwork on top of that is a mountain. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole other mess.
Absolutely. Well, Thank you so much, Jimmy, for being with us today and for sharing all this information. It's been super insightful, and I know we've had some good response from it. So, are there any last words you like to say? I know that sounds so bad, but any last things you like to say before we end for the day?
Everybody just keep creating, keep experimenting. I'm gonna do the same, and I'm always open to just meeting and talking with filmmakers. I think the other thing is people have to. Nobody should ever be used and abused. Like, don't go work on a set for like 2 weeks for free and not expect something.
Yeah,
But when you can pay it forward in like a nice way, like try to. Like I follow some producers, and if they're looking for a script that I don't have, but I know somebody else that does, I try to push them. I try to push like any crew members that I know because most crew groups they're not looking for directors; they're looking for like sound people and stuff like that. I always try to pitch people that I've worked with or people that I know their work. And every now and again I'll get like a friend who just has a short film. They ask me to like look over the script, like just you know um make sure you know your worth so you're not getting like used and abused, but when you can afford it, help out other filmmakers.
that's amazing. So
So
true, and I appreciate you saying that because
yeah,
that's
because I don't want to look
much.
like I'm not telling people to go like crew for free on something because like I don't do that really. I rarely do that. I should say there's some people that I've done that for, but I try not to. But so I'm
If
not telling
you do
anybody.
that, you need to make sure you have good
Right,
screen, like, you need to get a decent get back from it as far as, like,
right. You got to just
using
know.
the
You
screen.
got to like I said, it's understanding your work. Like you know what? Like if I
Exactly.
went like I don't know makeup. Like if I wanted to do makeup, I probably would have to intern at least on one shoot or something like that, just because. But other than that, like it's more just understanding most of the people that seem to go further in the business are people that are able to work good with people and just know how to do that. And like I said, like if you can do somebody like a favor that's really not, like if you know a sound person that's trying that they send you their stuff and they're trying to, or like a music composer, because I have that,
Mhm.
like, especially on LinkedIn, like they'll send me some stuff like, listen, even if you didn't use them or you didn't have a chance to hire them yet, if you see something like a post they want to thing, just comment their name or share it. It's like little things like that. It'll go a long way, and it's like there's a lot of Twitter. There's a lot of screenwriters that like somebody asked a question, so like I replied it. And like I replied two different answers, and then somebody else followed up with explaining why one of those answers work and one of them doesn't. And then like it like becomes like a thread of like, oh, here's everybody getting to learn something about screenwriting from like this like one thing, and everybody kind of participating. So when you can, participate.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love it. Participate, and I like what you said, don't work for free, guys. Like,
Yeah, don't work for free.
you need to
I'm
get
not telling
something
people to do
valuable out of it.
that, but like just know how you can handle it. Like if
Yeah,
you're a beginning screenwriter, maybe offer somebody just say like, hey, I just want to read your script and critique it or something. I don't know,
yeah.
just and if you could find like groups, find groups and you know if anybody has any questions or anything like that, they can reach out. I can help.
Well, you've been a wealth of information, and I know that people will reach out and ask for help and everything. And if you guys want to work with Jimmy, definitely go to his website, fightonentertainment.com. You guys can find a lot of his works there, commercials, content, all that good stuff. And then you can find his social media on there as well to follow him and support him that way. Definitely check Jimmy out. He's got some really cool stuff and has a lot of really great information. So I would highly, highly suggest asking questions from him in the future. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Jimmy, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you back here next time and have a good